Díomh Gcuoine Uaisle agus fáilte. Hello and welcome. It's Misha Amy the Crafty Kylock, and I am absolutely delighted, over the moon, not to be punny about it, but over the moon to have Oein DeBhairduin with me today. Owen is an author, storyteller, activist. He is currently the curator of the National Museum of Ireland Traveller Cultural section, and also a long-time board member of several Mincéirí and traveller community groups. He has also published a book in November in 2020, I believe, Why the Moon Travels, which is a collection of folklore, folk tales, and personal experience as well of traveller culture and story and folk tales, which also is an award-winning book. Won the KPMG Childrens Book Awards last year, the Eilís Dillon Award, and also you got the Special Recognition Award from the panel of judges as well, which was absolutely well deserved. And Owen's also working on a few different projects in relation to Gammon-Cant, which is the minority language of the travelling community. So I am so delighted that you agreed to come on and talk to me. I'm just all of everything that you do is everything that I love. It's like you have minority language, you have folklore, you have herbalism, you have activism. So yeah, I'm absolutely delighted that I get to talk to you about everything. And also it's Traveller Pride Week, so I was really absolutely delighted you were free, because I know you're really busy this week. There's loads going on over the next couple of weeks. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to me.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the very warm welcome.
Well, I've been wanting to reach out to you for a while, and I'm a little bit socially awkward about like reaching out to people going, "Hi, will you do an interview, please?" So
I don't do interviews. I do conversations and chat.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, I have my crafty kind is my little playlist for these interviews, and that's what I like. I like kind of more kind of chats, interesting chats, and I can't wait to ask you loads of questions about everything. I suppose like if anybody's watched this channel, they know I love folklore. So, and I know like it's having folklore and the preserving that heritage is so important. So first of all, what inspired you or kind of pushed you to write the book and to kind of document those stories?
So it's unusual. So I've been writing for many years. I've had a series of blogs, and I love writing. I think writing is actually a pleasure. I'm always confused with people who can sit around typewriters and keyboards and slave away. I find writing a joy. And I wanted to write something, but I decided originally I didn't want to write something about travellers, because that's what travellers do. We ever did a corner and travellers talk about travellers, but all the stories that kept coming to me were the folk tales and stories of my youth that kept coming in there. And we have a traditional belief that like stories are live, they're the entities into themselves. And so I'm kind of going, okay, just like they're haunting me at this stage, might as well do something with it. And I came across a publishing company called Scheme Press, and they're actually already been aware of my, which I wasn't aware of. They were being aware of me, they were so small. And I think my approach to them was slightly different. I think a lot of people submit their work and hope that a publisher would take them on. My approach was slightly different, is that I knew these stories are of great value, of importance, of connection. So from anything from on a spiritual and to a very practical level, that they are our tales. So coming from our community, that's either, it's very oppressed and at times and also very overlooked. So we had a process of, is this a good home for a while and platform for these stories? Would they be honoured? Would they be respected? Would they get the patience and time and care that they needed? And they did, and I'm actually absolutely delighted working through that process. But I think that approach may have not meet everybody. And I think sometimes, especially in the publishing world, there's very few options for some people. But I do feel very blessed, and I think it was something that I've always wanted to do, but something that just it needed to happen, and the circumstances, the stars aligned, as they say.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. No, that and I've looked at Scheme Press themselves as well. They have some very from what I've seen anyway, it is kind of people from more marginalized communities, people from direct provision as well, and they have a really nice selection of books that they kind of cater to as well, which is nice. It's lovely to
I And I think at the moment, like there's a shift at the moment, especially with like minority kind of voices, that more people are thankfully getting heard. But what we need is actually a structural change, because who is doing the acquisitions of them? Who's doing the reviews of them? Who's doing the editing of them? Like who sits on the boards of these organizations? So sometimes people present, oh, we're very diverse. We have a Mincéirí kind of author, we have some colour, and you're kind of going, yeah, but that's very kind of service level, kind of going, how are people influencing the structures?
Yeah.
That's why I quite like about Scheme is that, and I know they're publishers, so that it's like, you know, there's a connection there, but the process that they engage with people is very different, and it's something I find is much needed in the international context, that's just Ireland.
Yeah, it's not like a tick the box kind of process for them. It's actually they are involved in it and they want to. Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic to hear, because you know I totally get you. Like when you see kind of systemic structures and stuff, and we're seeing it all the time, from like small company levels to big corporations and government levels. Like sometimes it can seem like a tick the box, and very much like in a lot of cases is a tick the box kind of thing for diversity. And I one of the things really that struck me first about the book was the structure of it. Like I love how you open up each story with a memory, and then you go into the story, and then you kind of tie it off at the end then with like almost like the kind of takeaway from it. And I just absolutely love that. I really, really love that. Like you make it really personal.
I think partly is because when two factors really in place about it, that within our tradition we have responsibilities around stories, as you name where you get them from, to the need to pass them on. And they know, regardless of how fantastic we're told as truthful, because they hold truth. And a lot of those tales came from my father, and being my father, he would often give me advice. You know, so that was part of the tales. It wasn't just, here's the story, isn't it great? You know, like, you know, it's like that story came with a context, the history, and its own biases, and its own hopes, and its own fears, because like where it flows through us and by us and with us. And I'm quite happy to be able to host them for a while and share them with us, because when I was working on the work, because how I work is I always record orally, so much to keep the flow and respect the tradition. Including working with the editing, like I really sit down with cups of coffee with people and going, is this in my head or have I put it on paper? You know,
yeah.
You know, am I explaining the story? You know, and the kind of working through that flow, I think, was very exciting, but also something that doesn't often happen, or people have the opportunity to happen.
Yeah,
but honoring those kind of oral traditions, especially with a travel specific context, it's quite important to me. But also, it's we're known internationally as being storytellers and being harbingers of these storytellers, and I suppose people who have had stewardship of many of the tales of Ireland, including the wider context, so to talk about in a moment. But it took until 2020 for stories about our people to be written by someone from our people. So any other stories that you most likely have come across about travellers had it written from a settled narrative perspective, looking in rather than looking out. And there's understandings and concepts within the stories, although they're very simple, that travellers read very differently. And there's certain situations of how people talk about, oh, this happened, so you go, yeah, you're a virgin, because you didn't pick up with the clue that travellers picked up on, you know? And even that is quite fun, you know, and quite fun and creative, and just because I thought I was making this fun little bird, so a little paper bird was going to step into the world. I was not expecting it to fly home, you know, and next, you know, and have eggs and nurture them, you know. So yeah, blessed and bountiful and excited to what comes next as well.
Yeah, and like I'm excited to see what you do next, because you've like so many interesting projects, which we'll talk about later. But I'm trying to keep track of things I want to ask you now. So you were talking about your dad, and one of the things I wanted to bring up that really struck me when I was reading it was the story Why the Moon Travels, that particular story where you're talking about your dad telling you that story at the start, and it's kind of what you touched on there, and I bookmarked it because it was just the way you put it in the book was just so lovely. So where is it? It's a quote there. It's right at the start on your intro. It's like, for many travelers, the gift of a story comes with the responsibility to retell it. which just that just really hit me. Like first, like you're saying, I really believe folklore and folk tales, it really reflects the psyche of people as well, and culture. And it, as you said, it has the little bits of the culture in it, and it has advice, and it has, you know, do this or don't do this, or this is what can happen in this context, which is really, that's why I love folklore.
Yeah, but losing those tales can be actually incredibly perilous, and quite dangerous for people. Like some of our tales were like, there's the water wetlock that grows, and it's quite poisonous. Horror blisters, the sap can cause paralysis and stuff, and we know it as angel breath. The day you set beneath it, you'd be swept away with the breath of angels. So it was an instruction of like, going, keep away from it. It's quite serious, but it's told in a narrative that a young person would remember, hold on to. And when I was found really interesting, and because they're there, just that they're not really held in common kind of concepts of people, is that for the wider community, where are all their stories? Where are those cremation myths? So they go, and we have the stories that were recorded, like we had a duke or something, and masters that work with by men, and the people were deliberately collecting. And so there's some stories that people don't want to share that way. They go, no, this is precious to me, I'm not going to share that way. And you know, it's kind of going, where are those stories? You know?
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of go, and like, I can't imagine my life not having those contexts, and having those guides, and having those directions, and having those moments to ponder. And but also even think about some of the elder lore, like the just say the Ulster cycle. So in our version of those, and in the actual tellings, they're all nomads. There are people.
Yeah.
You know, regardless of how mythological or not, they're nomadic people. You know?
Yeah.
And very few people from the wider community actually makes that connection, but tribers do. You know? And I think that people realize the interwovenness of identities of communities and history. If they even do realize the kind of going, yeah, you know, the way that she was here and it was there and she was there and she was over there. That's a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
And they had camps, and they had forts that where people did come together. But there's a bit of traveling happening going on there. And so like even our community, we like those stories and those kind of explains like the internally they're seen as part of our lineages as well. You know, and be told very differently, because we even have this retelling of the Salmon of Knowledge, and toward the end it shifts quite differently. Is that they had finished, obviously the thumb had been burned and the wisdom had been kind of, so the knowledge had been gained, and they had left the bones behind and then moved on. And a traveller lady came down and she took the bones and made a broth and she drank from it, and she got the gift of wisdom, because knowledge without wisdom is actually quite dangerous. Wisdom without the ability to apply it is quite inept. So the idea would be there was these two powers existing, so that could come back together to make something quite potent. And I think that story is lacking when you don't get the other half of it.
I'm not gonna lie now, I got chills. Like, that's amazing. Like, that's yeah. But like, it's so true as well, like, because there's no point knowing everything if you don't know how to apply it.
Yeah. You know, they're quite dangerous.
Absolutely. One of my favorite stories from the book was and a part of knowledge that I kind of grew up with was the badger, how the badger got the stripes. Now, I hadn't heard the story of how the badger got her stripes, but I had a little nugget of wisdom that I did grow up with, which is putting the twigs in the shoes to, like, so that the badger, if it grabs onto your leg, will hear something break and then leave you alone, hopefully. What is your favorite story that maybe not even that you shared in the book, but what is your favorite tale?
It changes as I change. So it changes like the days of it. So depending on what's going around with me at the moment, one of my favorite stories is actually a story of my grandmother. And I'm actually currently in the process of recording it. And how I record it, though, I do talk to people in terms of nuances and understandings. But the very, I suppose, short, reductive part of the story is that it was customary sometimes for, especially if there's a large camp of people moving, to send people ahead, especially young children that could move swiftly, to get the best pitches. Because, like, you know, this is the most shelter, this is the least ants, the water will run off here. And it's very human. But one of the tales that my grandmother and her sister Biddy, left the camp early and took to running to find the next pitch, which was some miles away. And they knew the spot where they go to actually stay. And they were a bit hungry, those who were there. So they decided that they would take one of their combs and put it in the pitch. So if other travelers saw it, they wouldn't go near it, because they think, oh, they have the Guia and the Greewogs and the woman herself. And they went back to the camp, got some food, and people slowly made their way up to it. So they were delighted. They thought, grand, we had the pitch, and they approached it, and there was no one on it. But when they approached where the comb was, it was a different comb.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and to this day, like my family don't go near there, and it's a part of it, it's a road, and it's a little bit boring, so because of the new kind of motorways and stuff. But and I grew up with that tale of, yeah, there was a comb there, but it was a different comb. So they're like going, this isn't for any of us to stay. Yeah. And that story itself. So they used to take to the game with my family, but also with the cultural awareness of the other world, the other people, the identity, and the idea of how the words can shift. Now, that could just be a point of mischief. It could actually be something far more mysterious and wonderful and chilling.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because like you hear of a comb, finding a comb on the ground, you instantly. Well, I instantly think it's banshee. Yeah. Instantly, you're like, no, you leave that there. You don't touch it. Oh, and sorry, you said I'm gonna butcher it now. The Gwir.
Grewog. There's the Grewog and Growog. Yeah, they're slightly different. There's kind of the same concept of the she, but they manifest differently. For instance, like even in this modern times, a lot of travelers would be far more comfortable which is a little bit unusual, in the presence of, just say, one of the Grewogs, the she, than an angel. While in the wider community, seeing an angel is more of a delight. And then I suppose the Judeo-Christian concepts are going, it's an angel. When our people kind of say, that's lovely, no, that's wonderful, something's seriously wrong if an angel is interfering in your life. Like, what's gone wrong? Who's butting in here? Like, how in danger are you? If it's even your own effort, it's like, oh, like, are you not listening to your own intuition? What's the world around you? It's something dangerous. And I go, and so people are often, there's like, I suppose, visitations or sight, something of that realm, that I go, ooh, why with the Grewog, it's like, that's just nature. You know, and I go, that's fine. We spend time in nature. We like nature. Nature and we're friends with nature. Like, Travis don't argue with the land.
Yeah.
That tree is not forcing them out of their homes. You know, so the relationship with those spaces are very different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. That makes sense, because they are from the land. They're of the land. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're off the land too. Like our people, like the Mincéir, like say we're the people we're the people of the roads, you know, walking people. So people are woven in. So I think that, and because we didn't have the same sense of boundaries on physical space, which is often connected with either stewardship or ownership, and although they're very different, is that those sensible boundaries became very, and I suppose we're more informed now, but they're very vague for people around our community, especially historically. And so the relationship with the land was different, you know, and the relationship with the entity of the land, you know, understanding of the land was very different. But even when myself and my partner were very blessed and beyond blessed to be able to purchase a home in 2011, my father came to me and said, you're the first generation of my people to ever be risked at being homeless, because we always have accommodated.
Yeah.
And that's a very different understanding for the wider community, where there's like generations of the potential of homelessness and addiction. You know, when our people, we had homes until very recently. So it's a trauma that people are adjusting to, and it's trauma that in our relationship with our spaces that we're also adjusting to. That's on the many psychological and other internal levels.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And obviously there's going back to systemic things in place that are causing that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, and it's also, a lot of people reflect back as we say with history. Like in 1963, we had the Irish Attendance Report, which was presented by Charlie Haughey. Everyone tighten their belts, please. And his line was, and bear in mind, okay, he didn't actually call for out and out termination of our people, but 20 years after Nazi Germany, he did use the term final solution, which is a very loaded term.
Mm-hmm.
And those policies were in place since 1998. So much so that our identity, the people, which we've had genetic studies, linguistic studies, socially, people see travelers as the other anyways. But up until 2017, the state didn't actually formally recognize our ethnicity. And it has only done so symbolically since. Yeah. Although I do think that things are shifting. And that has a big part to play on even on our stories and how we relate to those stories, and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to the places around us. Because I often hear, like, we have different words for people of the white community. Sometimes we say settled people. Sometimes we say Beaufair, which is one part of the language. And other times we say country people, which is very interesting, because the people of the country, which means the people had developed a language of a response kind of going, they belong here, but there was a feeling that we don't.
Yeah.
You know? You know, and those things do present in there. And even now they present our language. I often talk about how on a Monday morning, if you speak to younger travelers, I found people don't say they went out; they say they got in. And that's a very deep, and you hear us, but that's very different. And even during the kind of the recent, like the pandemic times, I had this moment of their own stories of people like going, I'm stuck in, I can't go anywhere, I want to go in this place, and they're going, that's your nomadic spirit, that's the edge of you that we are representing. Everybody's from nomadic history, everyone's from nomadic past. This is a part of human experiences, and we were the people on this island who just maintained it.
Yeah.
But and it's quite unusual where, as a country, Ireland recognizes travelers socially and recognize like love our music, they love our costume, they love our oh my god, they love the wagons, oh my god, people love nomadism, they love their interest in our language, interest in our stories, just don't know us enough to love us. Like love all the things we do. If you think about something Ireland likes about its heritage, its history, like the stories, like the crafts, it's like the remembrance, like the connections. And then you have people going, but that's us. Yeah. And when it's happened, like we've internalized that kind of the sort of colonial spirit of, but you're not the right type of Irish. And you're not the right type of heritage because you're not actually invested in the land the same way that we're invested in the land. And you like even the idea of concepts of time. We often joke about it being like travel time. The idea of my father goes fishing when it's fishing time, because that's the time when it's fishing. It's just like what days it is when it's fishing time, and like you go, it's a month, no, it's fishing time. And so type of move, but also people, because of the large amount of oppression and issues and reflection. I mean, we historically we had a very high life expectancy, a very long one. So much so, in 1923 on Dáil records, we had a TD looking for blood transfusions from travelers because of the high resistance to TB.
Oh wow!
That's on our state records, and it was delicious, and the idea of like so traveling from being very healthy. And we also have a very, there's other stories that we have a unique, as well as withering away now because of people's kind of, I suppose, practices. We have unique, I suppose, bioactivity within our guts, which is around resilience and stuff. So there's all these factors. But at the same time, 1 in 11 travelers die by suicide. Our life expectancy is like 61, which means by 38, half of us are gone, People don't want to home us. They're burning our homes. That just need to do this. People don't want to apply us. People go, oh, you're great, but it's not near me. And that affects our stories and how we share them.
Yeah.
Because if I have something really precious and I'm going, well, I am, which is also kind of go, but I associate you with from the wider community as well. And we haven't had the time to build relationships. Why should I give you this?
Yeah.
And this is part of yours. This is part of you. It's not just travelers. This is part of the Irish concept. It's the European, international. This is part of the stories. But people, and so people hold them. So, because even when it came to the book and the material, I was very much like, no, it's like they're going to be out there or they're going to be lost. And there's little stories and there's cross verifications and like, but I'm really interested in kind of all the people that are going, where are your stories? Can we bring them back? Can we find them? Can you make new ones? Because the world is so rich and vibrant. And we've been told kind of going, this is the way to be when you're in this space, rather than like going, that has never been true. And then one of my frustrations, and obviously, is like St. Bridget's crosses. RT is such an injustice with a single forward, and I'm going, the variety of the St. Bridget's crosses.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and expressive. Like would you literally sit there all the time doing the same cross? Or you like going like, do I have not a spark of creativity in myself? I'm going to try something new. Yeah. But we're told like, no, monoculture, because these need to contain and control and dictate. Rather than like going, we're all mad. And we just celebrate this.
Exactly. Yeah. like the same, like you get some really intricate like crosses on crosses on crosses. Like can't have enough of them. The St. Bridget's crosses. Like there was when I was living in Cork. I was living in Cork City for like 5 years, and there was a traveling woman that would sell the St. Bridget's crosses with her daughter in Cork City, as well. So I used to get my St. Bridget's crosses off her, because I didn't know where to go to get reeds, so I go down and get them off her. But yeah, I can imagine now, like she always had the 4 cross, or the 4 arm cross, but I can imagine like it's that image that's just been like, that's the image that's taken and then that's used as the symbol, rather than actually looking at the diversity that's actually available in the designs. Something I'm
delighted to hear as well is that I don't want to say I was nice to hear about the travel woman working. So most people, even that religious schools or summaries in our history, is that up until 98 we had the Market Traders Act come in. The vast majority of travel women were self-employed or had their own source of income, which means patriarchy is horrible. It has destroyed every single community, has done so much damages. But out of the tribal community, never went through that Victorian enforced man has to work, woman can't work. So there was a lot more freedom within the community for women, not as much as there needs to be, around, because they had an independent source of income. And that actually had a huge impact on our stories and how our stories moved and worked, is that the roles had shifted. And even now, when people think travelers, there's the whole thing around, especially travel women in particular, it's like this whole thing of either clothing or cleaning. And I was really interested with the cleaning thing, because my mother is a woman who I associate with warm jumpers, really tight hugs, and a smell of bleach. Because she grew up in a situation that even now, like, she will, and I did not inherit those qualities. She inherited, like, she practiced that she would clean the floors 3 times a day, in the morning, in the evening, and at night. Even though no one stepped on it, next morning, you clean it again. Because she's from an environment that if you've got a simple scratch, your life was at risk. You know, and also you wouldn't have been very, I suppose, open to doctors, because some doctors wouldn't allow you onto the registers. Some doctors would over-medicate you in order to keep you away. And also, we have a generation of missing children. You know? So people were very, anything to do with the state. So I think, and those, so if you don't know those concepts and understandings, you don't really see the other versions of the tales and the concept, because we apply them, we apply our cultural and personal framework, and then you can going, oh, there's actually this other side that you haven't got to explore yet, that would throw a light in a very different way.
Oh, 100%, like 100%. And it's like learning about different perspectives as well is so integral to like understanding each other and getting rid of that otherness. Like it's like we're all people, we all come with our like individual personal perspectives on life and how we've grown up, and like 100% I wouldn't blame anyone for not trusting the state, especially the traveling community not trusting the state and everything. Like, it's like after what the community has gone through, especially like as you were saying, since like 1963.
It's actually before that.
Like, well, before that as well.
Yeah, actually, one of the first bills, one of the first bills we found unconstitutional, which was I think it was called the Schools Attendance Act. It was in 1923. And it had many, many powers, and it wasn't found unconstitutional on these grounds. But it called for provision for itinerance, which was again coding for the nomadic people. Was they had to obtain a minimum standard of education, or the child could be removed from the family. Now we're in 2022, and Ireland still just have a minimum level of education. But it also called for all travellers to register on the 1st of May in the local Garda station, which means they criminalise the identity of travellers. And that's just what the state was formed. So people often think going, like, we went through this lovely romantic period and it was lovely. And you're kind of going, no, we totally inherited that colonisation.
100%. 100%.
You know, but we thought we were doing it mighty, because it's like, we're doing grand. We had the Celtic revival then, like, but not with those type of Celtic people, we have the richer kind, or more open, rather than the people who have more complicated identities.
100%. And I something else, I can't remember exactly what you said now, because you're so full of information. I love it.
It's not rambling.
I love it. I love rambling. But I remember I was looking at different things on Dukas. I'd spend an afternoon on Dukas every now and again, and looking at the stories about traveling people, and like particularly in relation to crafts, or in relation to kind of like different stories and stuff. And I was surprised because of the discrimination I see now, right? And I know it's been there for decades, if not like centuries, like longer than centuries. But there were so many stories that I found that respected and like kind of not necessarily put them on pedestals, but really like respected and talked about them in a respectful way. But they're like, just as simply, there were other stories that weren't, and that were very much like buying into that.
People were seen more human rather than just villains.
Yeah.
Joe, we were seen as like going like good days, bad days, kind people, not so kind. And I think the greatest shift happened with like I suppose power, plastic, and property. So power, it's very easy to other us, because we didn't have a social, I suppose, allotment. But in order to navigate those spaces, we didn't have a history of those connections, and we didn't actually have the ability to navigate in different ways. And we often see that around, for instance, like even here in Ireland, about the LGBT movement. This movement was so powerful because anybody could be LGBT.
Yeah.
You know, like I suppose you mean that explains that movement suppose fluidity, while a traveller is a traveller within those contexts. And we have, I suppose, we have the three gates to be a traveller. Plastic, which means that we were a community that was originally green workers, which means we recycled, we renewed. Plastic, which drove people away, which means we didn't have a societal role as much. You know, and also come to property. The vast majority of people didn't own property. But that kind of shifted, you know, with the solutions of this certain landlords kind of structures and certain commonage. And then you were talking to a community who traditionally does not understand or value the concept of you owning land. You can mine land, you can live on land, you can be, I suppose, you know, the stewarder of it. You can have your boundaries, but you can't own the land. Like, that doesn't make sense. So those applications to a community who had a very different kind of like cyberpunk kind of, I suppose, approach to it was confusing, and that caused a lot of friction.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and also we were interpreted as friends, but after in time we became the strangers. Like we had roles or messages keeping. We had the idea of, I suppose, you know, like care, land working, to all this stuff that people had roles. And when those opportunity roles came down, we were squashed tighter and tighter, and eventually we're pushed out.
Yeah, and like, and just as you're talking about it there, I think it's interesting that now in the last couple of years particularly, we're seeing, and not like at a kind of wider, more mainstream level, people are like understanding we can't be using plastic. We need to go back to natural, sustainable materials. We need to be recycling. We need to be taking care of the planet. Nobody can own property because it's too fucking expensive. Nobody can get on the property ladder. And people are now transforming vans and having that van life and living nomadically, and it's now like trendy, whereas we're like there's still such discrimination against your community. Like what do you think?
You can live a nomadic lifestyle. Oh no, but you can live a nomadic lifestyle here in Ireland if you have money.
Yeah, and it's acceptable if you have money
and if you're
doing it the right way.
Privilege.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with this like van life stuff, because I have a few friends, and they're very legitimate friends, who spend a significant amount of time during the summer living with band in different kind of ways. And when they're approached, if they don't have the recognizable kind of like ethnic kind of factors of accent, clothes style, family structure, they're absolutely left. They're like, oh, you're fine, not causing any problems. But if it's a travel family, I mean, we have laws in this country that can remove your home from you within 24 hours. Just remove your home.
It's
in a country that had occupation that is absolutely fanatical about protection of homes and of land, and that, you know, that is still allows it. And it both mystifies me, but also shows you how, unfortunately, in culture and in practices and systematically, that rejection and derision and hatred at times, unfortunately, towards our community is that it remains so unseen.
No, it's and like it's shameful. It's like I like, and you know, like I'm no fucking saint. Like I would have grown up with that kind of like, and you learn the prejudice. Like you learn the prejudice, and then like it's your responsibility to unlearn it and to educate yourself, and to do better. And it's and like I'm not even on the receiving end of it. And when I see people, I see yourself, or I see Rosemary, Mincéirí on Twitter. Rosemary is amazing, and she does so much great activism work. But the amount of hate she gets for just existing is just it's shameful. It really, really is shameful.
But I think sometimes, like I don't forgive that kind of practice. I can understand it. You know, when like there was campaigns about introducing travel culture and history into the curriculum, that, you know, that has changed from teach to promote, and I'm not quite sure what that means, to be honest. We've shifted our language from decolonization, when you're kind of going, is that a new term for anti-racist? You know, like, is that the same thing? We just put new bows on it, so we're not doing this thing anymore. We're just doing this thing because it's, you know, it's like, oh, we're just here. But if most people don't know us and understand us, like I'm with my partner for 16 years now, and we've spent our entire time unlearning and unpicking on both sides, because I had huge concepts around settled people as well. On both sides of undoing that kind of, I suppose, indoctrination into this idea of the power struggle and an approach. So I do understand, and actually at times have some, not as much as I used to, but have some sympathy for people who are absolute omagons when they come things that come out with, because you're like going, like, you hate the concept of me. It's much harder to hate me if I was up close. You
Yeah.
know? It's much harder. And I go, you don't know anything about me. You don't know that actually I'm a part of your history. I'm part of you.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, like, kind of you doing this, how is it actually going to affect you, or to robbing yourself off. You know, and so yeah, can't forgive it in that way, but I do understand it a bit better than I used to.
Yeah.
And our, like, even our history and our lore and our space in our crafts and our magic and our spiritualism and our connections, that when out travelers is a beastly thing. It's a hollow thing because we're not taking in the whole of it.
Yeah.
You know, we're alienating and we're stylizing it and we're ripping part of that soul out. So, and I often see it even within kind of certain kind of sectors of our community, especially people who are very kind of earth-based kind of spirituality, connection, and spirituality for travelers, by the way, is very different. But, you know, like, even Roman Catholic Church, I once sat on for many years on the parish of the Trapping People's Council. Right? People don't realize there's a unique parish for travelers here in Ireland, actually in the world. So around 40 or 43, 44 years ago, the church decided to form a unique parish for travelers, for the parish of travel people. That's headquarters is in Dublin, in Fitzborough, right beside the church. And any traveler in the entire world can be a member of it. I sat on that panel, not panel, I suppose, council, very actively, very openly, through the marriage equality referendum and repeating the eighth. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was not terrorized. I wasn't demoted. People have somewhat concepts around my orientation because they did, like, what's your role in our community? But when it came to spirituality, it was like going, did what I need to do, and then you stick a Holy Mary on it. And then, yeah, because even now, if anyone's ever had the opportunity to be around Ireland and seen some of the sites, and hopefully some sites that are somewhat maintained or supported, you will see loads of the Virgin Mary statues, which is the goddess, almost goddess type of veneration support. And Jesus is there, but he's very rarely the main show. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just feel, so I think that echoes back to an other understanding of Ireland. And if you've been to a holy well that travelers have visited, you can tell because there's ancestor veneration all over the place, because the pictures of people and usually laminated, there's items left, and then how we approach the Clutie system is different than people the offerings. And if you visit graveyards of where people are buried, they're not often graves. Sometimes they are altars.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. No, I have seen some Mincéirí grave sites, and they're amazing. Like genuinely amazing. Like the veneration, and yeah. And like in terms of then yourself, your own spirituality, would you be like, where do you sit on the spirituality?
Oh, I would be like many travelers. So I'd be like very much as pagan as the hills, like old faith, you know, and those customs and practices, but in sometimes a structured Judeo-Christian Roman Catholic Irish structure. You know, for instance, like you'd have St. John's Festival, fire festival, building the bonfires, picking the wood, you know, connected with the land, purchase the land. People gather that ashes to give to women who are hoping to have a child who's never had a child. You know, so like people, so we have all these customs people don't know. A friend of myself, kind of was a woman called Maggie McDonough, who lives in Knoll, who started a project around we're going visiting wells that travelers visit, and we're going to visit. I think we visited 20 odd now, but we're going to visit in total 60. And how travelers view certain wells are very different than local people say, oh, that is for the eyes, right? Travelers will have, oh, and there's this and there's that, and you get in on a Sunday when they do this, and they go in with this happens. So it has all this other lore. And some of it is new and some of it is being adapted because someone went on a Sunday and did this, and that's how you got. There's even a wonderful church in Cale, in Palcoo Hill in Cavan, that people go down, and there's a certain image on the stained glass windows that people touch, and it's for the removal of migraines. And I've never seen that anywhere outside of the community. And we even have lists. And actually said to the office this, and so some items of the list are a little bit problematic. And so this of curing people across the country, ringworm, strokes, chickenpox. Some of them are people need to work on something. Like at one stage, autism come up, like, that's not for curing.
Yeah.
But I understand you more like kind of go, you know, the approaches of it. But we have a list that we share, kind of going, yep, this is what it is. And they come with rituals and understanding. And you often see travelers now wearing the cords.
Yeah.
where the chords, especially the red and white chord, I think, which is Philomena chord. And I love Philomena, right? Because she is a folk singer. She is not actually a canonized saint. And I love the idea of and how she came to be, but she came to be with vision. And she came, and the idea that the family of the skeleton had been martyred, and suddenly she became this whole identity, and tribes adore her. And you'll often see people, her symbol is the anchor and the fern. So a lot of people, especially some of the older travelers, especially like beady pockets, which are the both storytelling, I suppose, garments, but also the basics of what goes in them, because you're moving around and having an outer pocket. We'll often have those silver or gold styled buttons with anchors on them. Do you know the little buttons in it?
Yeah.
And they're sold on for Saint Philomena.
Amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. Yeah, we
So that
should
was
know this yeah, we like this needs to be like, and not necessarily shared with the wider community, but like even like the importance of keeping those traditions alive for younger travelers. I know, like as you said, the beady pockets there. I know I saw I think it was Pavy Point had shared the video where they were doing a workshop with younger travelers and they were making little beady pockets.
I think they were travel movement, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. Well, so or maybe Pavy Point shared it on Facebook, but I remember seeing I thought that was such a like just that kind of stuff. It's so,
and those garments are incredibly sophisticated. Like different stitches mean different things.
Yeah.
Different corners of the pocket mean different things. Different styles, different patterns, different colorings of threads. And I'm always reading as well is that people talk about the outside of those pockets. They really talk about what's inside them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that really fascinating because I read now because certain travelers will carry certain things. Like there was a dress, people call it pennies, and I always thought it was for penny furs. It was like the style of dresses, and those dresses would have different layers on them. For you tend to do going, is the woman married? Is she widowed? How many children does she have? How did she lose any children? Had been kind of in life, or had she miscarried? Or there's different ways, and you tend from looking at a dress. But turns out to be they call them pennies. Is that women would often stitch a single penny into the corner as a backup.
Huh.
Yeah, that was the backup.
Yeah.
And this is again from a time where a penny actually would have significant changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like even that alone is like it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah. So I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, like I'm terribly interested.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. You often notice when travelers come together. So it's not, I love the character. So it's not considered rude to cross the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and at all. So we had this kind of second talk. It's like, you take your turn. And now it's your turn. Right? While we just talk. So, yeah. And even we were slipping on, sorry for cutting in. You're like, but you don't, you're not sorry. Just keep going. And where had I started with that now around? The idea of where I suppose like my sense of my spirituality. Kind of, I think just like being someone from a nomadic heritage, it's very hard to put definitions on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say I found a lot of the old customs. I found a lot of the old rituals. Now a lot of them have shifted into like obviously like all like for myself it was like Sow and like Nuria, which is the whole like the I suppose Crokin, which is like time of the death. You visit the graveyards, you bring their favorite food, you tell their stories, you say their name. I could even when I was very young, my parents would walk through the graveyard and name people because like people die when they die, but you're dead when you're forgotten. So it's the whole thing of having to name people, and you could like, and it's something I really encourage people, especially with old graveyards. You could be the first person in many, many years to say that person's name. You may have read it, but who has actually said their name?
Yeah.
And that is a way of connecting, and rituals like that are very important to me. But also, there's different things that people do at different times. And sure, we love a good candle. Oh, we love a good candle.
Oh, sure, who doesn't love a good candle?
Oh, but there's whole things about.
I can
a candle, and there's a candle. Like, there's a different. Joe, and I even how. One of the things we did when I went to Lourdes, of all places, my sister who went to go to Lourdes, and my friend Maggie, and we were there, we were thinking, oh, aren't those candles lovely? And we're like going, yeah, but we're going to take the wax home because the wax, the wax on burns helps burn recover. And if a child is suffering from night terrors, you put that under their pillow. So, and there's a whole list of things that wax did. So we're over going to even have like it's taking this time. We're helping tidy it. Yeah. So which wasn't like that itself is magic through the vehicle of the church, while not in any way engaging the church or consulting it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of it's fine because of the Holy Mary there, right? But why the fact that the whole different patterns happen. I know that I know people would be very, very kind of, I suppose, So people were very strong. They did the very much Roman Catholic and this, what to do, and they follow the church in a very specific way, or actually just of Christian faith. Because moving rise, the large population of our community that would be of more Protestant aspects. There are people who are atheists in the community. People, most people though have some connection or practice or correspondence, or even like to the old world and the old practice. Like, I think it was in March. I was in Galway with Thomas group. There are a theatre group of the name of come to me. And we're working on a few ideas and stories, and Travers were telling those stories, and they were doing an action. Someone put shoes near, and I know this practice is about within the wider community, but put shoes near a table. And it was pandemonium. People like, we can't.
Oh, yeah, no.
You gotta think, because those had shoes on a table when someone's dead on it. And how these are people were in Galway who were from Connemara, and we were like going, how do you not know this? How do you not know? Yeah. And if you can't, don't any put shoes on it, but it's something over it, and there are no shoes, right? But we have other practice, the idea of you'll often see a lot of pictures of Travers in churches with very well designed and usually handmade shawls with the child beside the altar, and it may always be a christening. But the thing is that when a child comes into the world, they're not in the world properly until they've touched the ground. So a lot of people will get the child blessed before touching the ground. So the first time into the world, they came with a different blessing. And then it said, with the history of it going, that makes a lot of sense, with that kind of practice. But that's not actually one of the rituals or rites of the church.
Yeah.
But it was something that people would be very upset if they weren't able to maintain.
Yeah. No, I get you there. Yeah, I think it's so interesting as well. Like in Ireland specifically, maybe not specifically, but just I suppose because I'm Irish and like I'm here. But like how you will, like you were saying, you'll see people that are very like I'm Catholic and that's it. But then when you kind of dig a bit deeper, maybe you know them a bit better, you're kind of they'll do things that are linked to older, kind of maybe more pagan or earth-based things. Like, sure, isn't a child of Prague just weather magic, really? Like,
or burying, which is happening a lot now, like burying Saint Joseph to find a home, or sell a home. You're that saint torture. Saint torture. I would kind of, my mother had falling out with Saint Anthony, kind of going, I'm not talking to him. I've asked.
But for Saint Anthony to be plagued, like,
because people develop like a relationship with this understanding, and then you realize it's not just an image; it's actually a sense of an entity. And strictly speaking, you're saying you can ask them to stop, but they have to go to Jesus. And a lot of time, as I suppose Mary is the pro-redemptrix, like she should be asked as well. But the whole thing is kind of going, go to Jesus. And when people like, who's going to Jesus half the time? Like people like going, everyone has Sandy and like Dial. Joe, and I think that is such a beautiful aspect of our collective kind of Irish traditions and understandings. And I often just kind of wonder, going, just make that step forward for Travers. Going, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just a different way. And if you understand the concepts behind it, you go, that's beautiful.
It is, but it is. I'm learning so much just talking to you. Like it's so eye-opening because we don't know and we don't appreciate. We don't appreciate it. I feel anyway. Like collectively, like we don't appreciate it. And we really should, because it is beautiful and it's part of our heritage. And I'll go off on a rant now, but I'm very passionate about heritage and like listening to the older ways, and obviously then folklore isn't just the old things either. It's the things we're doing today, and it's like the traditions we're making as well, and carrying those on and like developing them as well. So
and because I'm really fascinated with people who are very strict on interpretations or retelling of folklore that's been written down. Right, and I find that fascinating because we're going. So, chances are that was a man's hand, and he probably was very well educated, so he's coming with a certain perspective. And this is the older, I suppose, tradition rather than the more kind of modern ones that we recorded. But people are so like kind of, that's wrong. That's different. You can't go, no, I can ask my mother something, ask my father, and they did not agree. Sure, you did not agree. So like, let's not allow that version to be the established only version, because sometimes the conversation going to go, oh no, that's wrong. And like going, why? Like, no, it's different. It's different, but I would be questioning the power and potency of somebody else's work and engagement if it's working for them, and I just find that kind of shift at times to be really bizarre. But especially within, I suppose, people within, or I suppose in Ireland, outside of Ireland, who are very connected, those pagan roots, those identities, and understandings, of how that is attention at times, and with an art community, that very rarely is that attention. An example would be the Frida, which was leaving out the cloth for St. Bridget. Like there's people like kind of going like St. Bridget's colors, of her colors. Some people associate St. Bridget with blue, and one of them, and also it's green. And other people are going, it has to be red. And other people know it has to be a combination of the blue and the red because the fire and the water. And other people are going, this is the cloth I have, it's the cloth I'm using.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you want to go, it's all absolutely valid, because people are navigating the way through those faces. And it's like, but I do think that we've been trained in such a way to edit ourselves. I'm kind of, this is the real version of something, because even when we're practicing anything, you're kind of, that's the real version. You're kind of going, like, trust me, like going, if my grandmother needed like candles for certain things, candles laid out in certain ways, and you put food and all stuff. Like if she should have a red candle, she's there.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's that kind of corporate side of certain things and certain qualities. And because I one of my passions is kind of herbalism, folk herbalism, and I was really, my mind was absolutely blown when I came to Dublin first, because I was here for 2 years, and someone in the city was running a foraging workshop. I thought that sounded lovely. And it was €300. And you're like going, what the hell? What? And I was booked out. So I was like, okay, fair play to you. That sounds nice. But like, how do you not know this basic information? And so all of our ancestors were kept alive, right? The only reason you were here is because someone knew something to keep them alive. And in 1 or 2 generations, we're like kind of going, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Is it poisonous? What does it do? Which means we've betrayed the suffering of people who suffer to give us knowledge, going, that's poisonous, or that's, let's sick of that, or that's going to kill you. So by not maintaining and holding and embracing that knowledge, obviously that has to have limits, because we're going to go, but not to encourage and cultivate it in our societies. Like we're dismissing all that wisdom and knowledge and power.
Yeah.
That's like knowing how to feed yourself, how to mind yourself, how to mend yourself is powerful. It's absolutely powerful. It's sustaining. And and I just think how our stories and identities and our lore and our crafts, like where we're slowly and at times continuously at risk of becoming products rather than people. And that just wrecks my head. And at the same time, I'm so interested in it. I'm like going, how is this happening? Why is this happening?
Yeah. Capitalism probably part of it.
Yeah, but part of it is that kind of going, like, we don't know the value of other stuff because no one's told us. So no one's actually told us, like, the idea of take your shoes off, go in, pick a few things, come home, and there's rules around that. Even with ourselves, there's rules about kind of taking things, and there's the percentages, and the whole long story.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned. Sorry, you mentioned in the book, was the Armid's voice.
Yes, Armid. Let's go.
Armid's, that story, and like you wouldn't take like if you're taking a dock leaf, you have to use it. You have to be able to, like, there's no point in taking it, or if you're not going to use it, it's a waste.
Why are you killing things?
Yeah.
Same way they're going, like, I, like, much to the other half's frustration, I don't do gardening, right? So, like, I plant things and they grow, right? So do we need a green flat grass thing? Or do I need a path to get from there to here? And then other than that, like, and then something was to the front garden, we have really thin stripes, and the only reason I'm kind of tempted to trim things down because we've walls both sides, and we're worried about the walls toppling and stuff. But there's so much beautiful things there, and this idea of like, oh no, that's not what a front garden looks like. It's like, it kind of is, because that's what the garden is. So it's done that itself. I planted a few things. One of them, I'm like, you're coming home with me. Because my mother had a storytelling garden. All the plants in her garden that she's planted around the edges are all from people in her life and places she's been. So it's a way of bringing that to her. And then there was stuff that has grown, and you're kind of going, okay, you want to live here. You're not, like, we're not causing problems to each other, so you can live here. So I think that we were talking about, I suppose, mediating our spaces with each other, and we only think people. We're not really thinking about animals or around like the actual plant life, or kind of the spirit and the history of places. Because I'm also really interested in the names of places and why they're named that places. And we have many different ways. There's a place on the Tuam Road that's before you come to Knockmay, and Knockmay is great, by the way, because Knockmay means the hill of Maeve, because there's a cairn there that claims to be the grave of Maeve. Very controversial flag, I know. But they even named the hill itself named after. And there's 3 cairns on it. There's Fir and there's Nesta. And Fir is really interesting because Fir is actually female, and Nesta is supposed to be the granddaughter of Moses. So there's all this kind of history, strong connections. But the road down that is called, that we know, I think it's called, like, it's off the N17. I think it's like N931, and people call it the Knockmay Road, and we know it as the Bhairdiuin. So people would navigate the space, and that is the bit. Do I know who the Bhairdiuin is? Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
People know, but people know that it's associated with the Bhairdiuin. And I was always going, is that a woman with facial hair, or is it a certain plant that we know who some calls the Bhairdiuin that might possibly have grown there, quite distinctly? And but even that mystery, kind of going, that mystery evokes wonder.
Yeah.
But also it connects us to, we don't always have to understand it to cherish it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Like, yeah. We're the same. Like, where I'm from now, I'm from Portlaw in Waterford, and there's, on the big landed estate, there's a figure, and we don't know, because it's stone, because it's so hard to date stone. We don't know if it's like pre-Christian. Is it like a pagan effigy? We don't know what it is, but colloquially, like on Griffith's valuations in the 19th century, it's marked as Mother Brown.
Oh,
there's no stories. There's nothing. We don't know what it is, but it seems to be this kind of Celtic style androgynous looking figure, and we don't know what it is. We don't know if it was a Victorian folly. We have no idea, but it's Mother Brown, and that's what it is. And like, you can even leave your imagination kind of
because
a little bit
until we know what it is, it can be anything it wants to be.
Yeah.
And again, stories are live. They're like to grow and change. Like, even ourselves, that there's I'm just around the corner from Corker Park, and on the maps of the park, and it's no longer there, there's a well called the Well of the Two Sisters. I'm like, oh, please tell me a story. Take the pain away from me. Like, going, where did that come from? I just like, even the name of the Well of the Two Sisters. Like, that could just be a well that 2 sisters used, or it could be something very different.
Yeah.
It could be very different. And and I actually am absolutely fascinated with wells. Because being around the corner for where we are, where the family home is, we are here in Dublin, where the family home is. There is an Irish sweat house, and a very old Irish sweat house, and beside it, the dipping well has a carving of St. Bridget on both sides, but one is much darker than the other. So there's also concept, like, and the brighter, shinier stone one is the one closer to the sweat house. Can't remember the name of the sweat house now. And it's a wonderful stone. You have to crawl in and everything to it. So they do. People would have gone in, people would have attained it, people would have especially come out, would have crossed over the fire line and gone to the water side. Like, people were carving the instructions, so visually, on how to take part in this. And and I just think that there's so much stories so visited in front of us. Like, if it was a donkey that bitten us by now, we don't always see it.
Yeah, we don't. You don't just point it out to you, or just, as I said, it bites you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just like, I just love listening. You just love listening to you, because you're literally just so full of information.
Oh, this could be an editing nightmare. I do apologize.
I don't edit these. I don't edit these.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I should have told me.
if there's something you said that you want me to cut out, I'll cut it out. But I don't, I don't edit the chat. Yeah. But no, like, so we've talked about loads. But one thing I want to ask is, we talked about, like, the kind of otherness and the discrimination and everything. And, like, what is something that, well, I suppose, first of all, like, we're talking about folklore there and the importance of it. What is, what, like, in your opinion, and we've kind of touched on it, but what is the biggest link, do you think, between folklore and identity, for you?
So I think, I suppose myself, I was quite lucky. I grew up in a situation where stories were used as armour. Like, my parents were very loving, but they knew the world was very unkind at times, especially the travellers. So we were taught just ways of how you are beautiful and you are powerful and you are part of this amazing lineage of people that other people don't know and they just don't understand. But this is a part of that wisdom and that understanding and that connection. And on the hard days and on the sharp corners, this is a blanket. This is a shelter. This is new leather on the bottom of your shoes when you feel you can't walk anymore. This is food for your belly and warmth for your heart. And this is a light in the dark when you're struggling in a lost place. And I think that folklore, it grounds me with people. It gives me a way of looking at the world, interpreting the world. So I think those words from his name was Michael McDonough. He now actually passed away. He was a wonderful man. He passed away last October, and he had a wonderful description, which I'm going to butcher, of how being a traveler isn't just about the act of nomadism. It's a way of looking at life and being in life and engaging with life. Now, in modern times, that has been incredibly distorted and skewed because of all these other factors. But when we step back, we kind of going, like the idea of living in a way that was very harmonious to the world around us, in a way that we shared and returned things. We had a different relationship with land and with the memories of land and ourselves. Is a way I think that gives me strength, but also gives me a clarity of kind of like this is something that is far more true to my heart and my soul and my being than what's been told about me. But people, like, there's stuff that people tell me about, and people, just quite often that people don't actually realize I am a traveler because I don't have an atypical accent. But this accent is a traveler accent. Just you don't get to see the travelers because there's at least 47,000 ways in this country to be a traveler. And so the amount of things people tell me about travelers is fascinating. But realizing how going, no, that I'm not that person at all. And if I didn't have that folklore, that could have really undermined who I was. Like a couple of years ago, a neighbor, who now knows I am a member of the community, was telling me he was showing me a goat head that he'd bought. And I was like, oh, that's very unusual. So, I'm just kind of like, what's that about? And the reason he bought is that he had been told that travelers associate goats with the devil. So travelers wouldn't come near his home and rob him. I'm there going, right, I grew up with goats. We had milk. You know, but also how, like, but in one way, also you're using an item as an animate, kind of, I suppose, animalistic kind of form, but also, like, historically and structurally, in all the studies we have, the majority of violence and issues among the traveling community is towards other travelers. It's that internalized pressure building up an issue. You know, most people have very little interaction with travelers, so, and don't know anything about it. So there's a little seed that goes, travelers are bad, everything. So anything these travelers do is associated with being, you know, that kind of story. And then, like, I think because when we do well, we're Irish, and we do wrong, we're travelers. And we're very rarely kind of held together on those identities, or where, especially as a member of a gay man who's a traveler. I'm at kind of like this version of me and this side of me, but not that side. Or like going, you're not one of those travelers, which is like, well, no, I actually am. I'm like, you know, just kind of going, or I'd never thought that you were a traveler. It's like going, is that a compliment or is that an insult?
Yeah.
Tell me. You know, because quite often it's a compliment, and you're like going, well, you need to do the work on yourself now, because I am, like, our communities are collective communities, while it's collective and it's shifting, but it's different ways. So most people in the settled community, the wider concepts, there's a strive for pure individualism. Like, I'm an individual, job. And with our concept of our community, like, it's more vague. And even how we have families, we don't have trees, we have like brambles. So you have your tribly, which is yourself, like your family. And that could be people who are not directly off your blood. For instance, like, I had 3 grandmothers. There's one called Nanny Cack, who is not our grandmother, not like, no, but she is my grandmother. She's identified as my grandmother. You have your triblies, you have your Giels, which people that you know you're related to, but they're not your family to. Then you have an Ish, which means that you know they're travelers, but you don't know how they're connected to you. But you kind of going, I see you. But like, we don't know how we're connected. And then you have the buffers, which means people who are not off the community, you know? And we often use set, but it just means anyone who isn't off the, you know, the collective space. Yeah, so I know if I didn't have those stories and that connection, I would worry greatly for my mental health in a world that tells me daily it hates me.
Yeah.
At the worst times, and at the best times, that I'm an inconvenience and an annoyance, or that I'm somehow responsible for anything anyone has ever done. But at the same time, they're immune to anything that their collective people have done. And that confusion of like going, hold me to the standard you hold yourself. You know, like, it's not so much, but also understand the concept of stuff, but also do a bit of research or review and look into things, because like, we belong to each other, and regardless, like, the state destruction society has not been able to get rid of us. Like, we're not going away. No. There is a shift in what people understand. There's a pushback. But it will take a lot more time. I think a lot of that can be at times very performative, because I've been in a place that people understand to be allies, but can be totally undermined by the power structures of even some says K word. And you're like, I've been there, I'm in a situation going, I'm not saying anything until I'm out of here. Like one day, my sibling partner, we brought our dog and Chester by a door, to the vet, and he's a Westie. And the vet, two of us, literally said, "Oh, West Highland Terriers, you have to treat them like K words. You have to show them who are the boss." And I was there kind of going, "This dog is unwell. I'm not leaving. I don't know. You do the internal kind of going. Him getting sorted is more important than those just happened." But how that was just, it was like
So casual. Yeah.
you know. And then, so we're not always in a position to push back, because the risk for a traveller pushing back is far more than someone who's an ally of the wider community.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not riskless either, and we need to understand that. But I think coming together in a stronger, powerful way is important, but it takes time. But also, it becomes part of our current story, because if the settled people and communities and structures and collectives, and some people don't like settled people, I'm like, I don't know how to refer to people. And it's, no, I don't know, because I feel because I was at a talk once where someone told me, they're going, "Oh, you can't call me a settled person." And they go, "Well, what's your preferred?" And they're, and I was like, "Well, I just use that for you, but like in general, this is the concept, it's just concept. So like, we're just, it's not the, but actually not having those, I think I will be quite frightened. And I think travelers have stories about settled people too.
Oh,
they're not always sure. But not always kind, but they're responsory. Like, for instance, by going, culturally, part of our practice is we're very outwardly about emotions. And that's actually seen as quite an honorable thing. If you're angry, you're supposed to be angry. If you're upset, you're supposed to be upset. If you're happy, you're upset. If someone dies, there is a public display, because that person, and the wider community has different culture and practice, obviously reserved. When my Dan's grandmother had passed away, and she went into her 90s, and his family were very, okay, we're coming together, and it's a very, very small family, and his cousin turned up, and it was unbuttoned, and people are like, "Oh no, he's taking it bad." I'm like going, that man is here. No. And afterwards, they went for tea and sandwiches. I'm like going, who has thrown themselves into the grave? And
where's the cat?
And it was very much like going, like, and they like Dan and his family, like, they loved her, but culturally, it was like, this is what we do. We control that here. It's a private right. It's a very private matter. We're in public. And how I interpret that, I'm going, you cold, harsh people. Because we were trying to go, like, settled people don't usually show emotion that way, and we were like going, how could you not? Different cultural paradigm and our fictions, but that becomes stories as well. It's like, oh my God, and he was 9, like she was 3, and sure, they might have just thrown her into the, in what there was care, consideration, kindness there. But when I was looking at it, I was like going, really?
Yeah.
Because I was expecting our rituals and our responses. And so it does go both ways, but unfortunately, we're not the one with societal power to enact those changes.
That's and that's a massive, massive thing.
Mm.
And what, like, not that it is your responsibility too, but like, it is a question I have. How can people be better allies? Like, how can settled people be better allies?
Yeah. So, how long these three training? So things like education, both about the community and through the community and by the community. So one of the things is one of the 3 things I ask for people is to learn things about travelers. Like going, what's the source of the information? Was the traveler's actual source? And also, was it was it community source information, or was it organizational? Was it the direct information, or was it building a relationship? Because it's the ones where travelers authentically involved. And have you cross-referenced it with your biases, as a response? But there's education, there's give space, actual space, give power, which people feel very uncomfortable by.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of that kind of, when we say about give power, is kind of going like employ people, make them decision makers, allow them to fail. People don't feel allowed to fail, like nothing's happening. Like be very honest about our own indiscretions and maybe our own limiting thoughts and our own past histories, our fears. I've met people in my life who want to discover whatever actually genuinely afraid of me. Because they thought if they upset me, suddenly I'd had 50 cousins turn up. And I going, like, why? Just talk about, and it's a natural response, but we don't even talk about those things. Or the idea of, oh, I can't be wrong, I'm going to be robbed, or there's all this happening, you're kind of going, let's just unpick that. But also, let some people who are travelers, like, go through their troubles as someone who's in the middle of a trouble, rather than saying traveler, you know? And then going, like, people can have substance abuse issues and addictions, which, oh my God, you know, like, they need so much support and decriminalization. No, and Joe, seriously, no, and working through those, but however, in compounds that the reason why that happened is because they're traveler, rather than going, you don't say that's the settled person who's also going through that struggle. You just say, it could be life, could be pressures, rather than why it's just resolved on an identity. Like, again, education, power, place, and actual commitments to build developing relationships when we can, and that's difficult. Especially a lot of people are under a lot of other pressures. I think Galway, so we are 0.4% of the population, kind of at the moment, but we're waiting for our own kind of census, or last census to the current Irish census, right? And in Galway, 20% of all people are homeless or trappers. You know, so that's, so imagine that shift in that space. So like this tiny community.
Yeah.
You know, and then there was research recently released, Dr. Cindy Joyce is involved with this with Limerick University, of how really sadly is that, like, for the same unfortunate point of crime, the sentencings are very different. You know, so we just so they would be pushed back, and also have those related conversations with our families and our friends. We often think it's generational things. They go, no, the young people I know are pretty hostile towards travelers, and then it becomes, and then there's things that people understand, that how travelers, kind of people, like, if you feel the world around you is actually an actual threat to your physical embodiment in life and family, you're not going to be on your own in places. So we often go around in large groups, especially men. And if your community is from a space that has spent the majority of time outside, your natural octave is much higher, loud-wise. So people see a group of young traveler men who are talking really loudly, rather than like going, chances are they're a little bit uncomfortable in your space too, because people interpret it going public spaces as settled spaces. Travelers very rarely say settled spaces. And I don't think I know a single traveler who goes into a public house who doesn't check themselves, see if, like, is this too traveler? You know, and then people do get in, there's a silent quota of 3, 4, 5 people a max, but then something we can't allow this to become a traveler. Because if you've been out about pre-COVID now, a little bit after, how often do you actually see travelers in certain spaces?
Yeah, never. Like,
we're not allowed in. Like, we don't get in. And there's people like myself who passes, sometimes, who has the privilege of how to go one of the spaces, and then you're like going, well, just know what, like, going, you just said something really offensive. You know, like, really offensive. Why did you say that? And I understand that, like, even the K word, people say, well, you know, I didn't mean it that way, I meant it this way. But I go, okay, but you also know you mean that way. So we're just saying, just don't use it.
Yeah.
Just don't use it. You don't defend any other words, you know? Like, I don't, because the amount of people say, oh, that K word, it comes from, like, people who killed horses, and it's about, you know, like, there's a removal of the horses and turning bones into the marrow, into glue, and kind of, I don't see anyone defending the F word, saying, when it actually was talking about was kindling, was collecting the wood, you know? Because we know pain is pain, but however, when it comes to travelers, it's emoted. And one of the things we want to talk about is also was language.
Yes. We do want to talk about language. I'm sorry.
Before the recording, we said, like, listen, we're going to wander.
We're going to ramble, and we're going to wander. No, and thank you for that as well, because, like, it is you bring up a good point. I don't see enough, and, like, I've worked in property. I've worked in places where I've seen the shit, and it's awful. But, like, yeah. So thank you for that, and I hope, like, anyone listening that is watching this, and just, you know, just check your biases, just, like, and just educate yourself. And it's, you know, it is, and it's racist.
Actually,
like,
push back.
Yeah, actually and it doesn't have to be, like, you don't have to shame someone. You can just go, hey, look, did you know that this isn't cool? Like, this is just not cool. This is, you know, that's, as you know, as much. And if someone doubles down, then that's where I search.
Yeah, you know, it's very different. That's different approach. Yeah. But most people, I think, are decent people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be hard to remember that, because when you're exposed to so much stuff.
Yeah.
And like the stuff that people, even like, something that's said to me over time, and like, and Twitter has been kinder to me, because my Twitter is it's not highly politicized, although I think it's political. I think everyone's political, because I'm kind of going like, this is a statement, this is a tradition, this is my dog. Also, you're killing our children.
Yes.
So I can imagine it, because at the same time, like, it's about, I'm still a person. My life I consider very boring. I love it. I love my life. Like, I'm very blessed. Thank you. But I consider the idea of like going, like, for most people, it's not the exciting travel life. You're kind of going, like, what TV show are you watching?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What are you watching?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of it comes down to like your perception and your prejudice, and perception, and just how that really just makes your worldview so much different, like, to other people. Mad. But also language does that as well.
Yeah.
It's my nice little segue. What another thing I loved about this book, I'm just going to keep going on about how much I love this book. Another thing I loved was that you included a glossary in the back as well, for the Gammon-Cant word. So could you, first of all, because I know a little bit about it, but could you explain to people that maybe don't know what Gammon-Cant is?
Yes, so Gammon-Cant is a form of Irish. It's one of our indigenous languages. We understand it to be a wonderful, I suppose, collaboration linguistically of Gaelic Irish, Old Irish, Modern Irish, and English. So there's different forms of syntax kind of reviews and linguistic kind of triggers in it. And like, and quite often people say it's a secret language. It's not actually a secret language. I have 11 dictionaries of it. To hear a lot of them, what it is, it's usually interpreted as the closed practice. Because people used to speak quite openly and freely. And you just imagine Ireland, and there's really, so it's regional dialects. You have like Connemara, Kerry, but also you have a language like Fingali and Yola and all this stuff. And you have a people who move and travel and circulate. So the language is going to be very different. It's going to spin a bit different. Yeah. And then also people are going to carry older forms of language because they haven't been gone through. They've gone through it, but in a very different way around the colonizationary forms, around the different, those practices. So it's a different kind of language. We call it Gammon-Cant. In 2009, it was placed on the UNESCO I suppose heritage list, which means it's protected. I 100% see it as an Irish language. However, it's not currently protected or promoted under the Irish Language Act. We're getting there, and and their structure there is changing. But a lot of people would say like the cant or the language or an Tory, which is just talking. Because we don't really sit down in our casual conversation going, I speak English. We just talk. Yeah. It's when we're talking to the other. And because even that idea of like the only people we say the language is secret is to settle people. Because otherwise you would speak it. And it was first openly recorded in a dictionary by Charles J. Leland, who was the same person who wrote the Gospel of Aradia. The same in it. We're going up to the whole Striga movement and everything. And I think it was 1836, 1878. And it's quite a sizable book. And he called it Shemta, which isn't a word from our language. Okay. I think he may have misinterpreted a term called Shelru, which is more of kind of a casual discussion. And then he just called it Shemta. But there's a lot of research on it, actually. There's several PhDs, like Maria Ryder and other things. But then again, it's all external review. Right, we haven't even had the opportunity to do a national collection of it, a celebration of it, and I'm off the very open disposition, which is on record all over the place, that we should be sharing it all over the place. We should be using it. I'm really excited with different groups like I think Waterford. I think it was Waterford changed to Mincéir Porn Irish recently, and then you have Micro Wedding, which is travelers talking. And when you say wedding, it means just talking, but there's a concept of equality in that term, that it in one way means everyone's equal from the fire. So that you're in a circle and we're talking, but it's like an idea of like the being, especially the organization, it might be a chair, but everyone's equal. So even while you're talking, it's a different type of that lace understanding that. And I do think it's one of it's a treasure within Ireland that we get to understand, because we hold and carry terms that the wider community has lost. Like the word Alami, which is found in Owen's script. It means the darker the night to us. And that's not in Old Gaelic form or Old Irish or contemporary Irish, but we speak it and we say it. Our name for a priest is Cuniac, which actually means druid. Our name for God is Gaudion, or Mugana Muni. Says another full title, and Gaudion was a variation of a smith god from ancient Celtic lore. So we're the people of the scripts, and it's not just it's a smith. It's the crafters and makers. It's people who And there's the whole, so our language is, it's a part of the overall, I suppose, Irish connection, but it also, it's the weaving of the different experiences and histories of it. And I absolutely adore it and love it, and it's a very important part of my identity.
Yeah. No, and I really appreciate that you're sharing it as well, because I've seen you share a couple of bits on Twitter, and I've seen a couple of graphics based on stuff you've done as well. And like the word, I was actually surprised to learn that the word pure was a Mincéirí word, because I remember it was kind of like what I thought was Cork slang a good few years ago, because loads of people in Cork were using the word pure for a time. I kind of like it, I stopped hearing it then after a while, but then I, like a few years later, I was like, oh, that's
there's a gay bar in Cork called Yours.
Is there?
Yes.
Where is that?
But it was pre-pandemic. I hope it's still there. We could Google that. We just hit time to Google it.
Yeah,
Google it.
That's fine. I will Google it later.
And then there's Fiend, there's Lush. Lush is one of our words.
Yeah.
Gammy, moniker, which is a legal term for name. That's one of our words. So there's all these understandings and concepts that has been shared, and we've shared them as well. They've come in, they're not just gone out.
Yeah.
And of how we've, especially in the areas where it had a lot of markets and a lot of that kind of trading, people who have had more contact with travelers would have heard the language a bit more. But like it can be quite a funny humor thing as well. Like my mother had an experience. Sometimes I tell the story I experienced some years ago where there was an accident on the road around the corner from us, and thankfully no one was very hurt. But there was a whole kind of dramatic moment. And the shades, which means with shade oak, which means the red coat people, which means the old permanent, which is coming shades now, which means the Garda, had been standing at the gable end, and my mother kind of going, okay, like I'm nosy, but I can't just walk down and him beside me. So she wanders down and she asks him, like, would he like a cup of weed? And weed means tea.
Yeah.
And she went in, and on the way out, she realized what she had said, and she took a bit of a wobble. But he took the cup off her anyways. And so those or even in terms like a curry is a horse. Reading fur, it actually means someone who's very angry. So we've obviously the word like read, you think like book,
yeah,
actually means someone, so there's all these different, how the language, obviously different terms and words, and also there's words that come with different concepts. Like one of my favorite words is gilhas or gilst, depending on where your family is there. And gilst is kind of a sense of, when someone's coming over and you feel I need to tidy.
Yes.
But don't, because you're really good friends, right? That's skills, like that's that experience. Like you have this like, oh, they're fine, they know me, and and you have to explain it. But when you say the term, and in a lot of our language, it's very situational based. Like it doesn't transfer well if someone isn't aware of the physical surroundings at times. So I have one of the requirements from the same man I talked about earlier, Michael Bhairdiuin, who goes inix, Aaron and inix, which if you knew what he was doing, where he was, makes absolutely perfect sense. And unless you break down how word formation and where one word follows another, it doesn't make sense to people. If you like that succession of terms, it's like it's the same word repeated. But if you understand the language and how, verbs as just move around, it just makes far more sense.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of terms that come in, and not people just say, oh, that or sham is another one. Like, oh, he's a sham from town, and like a lot of travelers, and not so much to myself, because I was like, oh, an opportunity. A lot of people just kind of go, it's really annoying because like that's our language. It's not slang, it's language.
Yeah.
It's like we're not a cultural subgroup. We're cultural peers. And when we say slang, it's like, no, it's just language, because people don't go to Kerry people and say, I am from Donegal, your version of slang.
Yeah.
So and because of that respect of that shared lineage, unfortunately, that's not always extended to the members of the community.
Yeah. And it's like so some of those words there I've heard just, and they're like loan words, and like you said, it works both ways as well. Like it's loan words both ways. And it's so great to see, because I love minority languages. Like I love Irish. I love like minority languages, and to see that there's projects like you're doing 3 projects at the moment, I think, or maybe more.
Yes.
The songs.
Oh, there's always more.
Yeah, there's always the songs, the dictionary, and then there's the Wheel of the Year, the kind of festival, the Wheel of the Year
Yes.
as well. So tell me,
Yeah. So
please tell
some of those, so some of them are really community artists. Other ones are actually just going through our community-based dictionaries, the ones that we've done, contrasting with the wider publications, cross-linking with possible with Irish speakers because it's a shared kind of concepts. And some of the words are also our adapted words. Like Cam, we know is an inversion of Mac. But that was first recorded again in the 1800s. And yet it was recorded in Northern Ireland, or just the north. So because we don't use the Northern Ireland, we say north, because we didn't have a border. We traveled, with other people. More flexibility with us because people from the Republic were like, yeah, you go there, and people were going, yeah, you go there. So we were able to go up and down, a lot more. And in Wales, so the idea of like people thought of going, well, that was it wasn't a word that was of its own origin, and for a reason, or was it a deliberate inversion? And people and both on one side have been going, could be a version, which means it co-adapted because of like safety reasons. Could be natural as well because if there's the whole thing with like Cam and the other possible kind of etymological roots for it. But when it was recorded, people on two different islands were still speaking it, and like how would anyone coordinate that unless it was there for a very long time? Like it's not that we sat down and taught each other going, this is the code for this word and this word. This is for words that our children and elderly people were still sharing with each other. But there's a theory. I think I can't remember his name is Professor, and it's from Ulster University. And it felt that there was a large amount of highly educated tribal people may have come together in the 1700s and designed our language as a way of protection and you're kind of going, that sounds fascinating. I don't know how that's practically rolled out in the community.
Yeah.
I think that doesn't undermine the possibility. Like if this language is 20 years old, it doesn't bother me. Like it's still ours, I'm still using it, it's still beautiful. But the idea of like the only people who are really, really interested and fixated on where it came from, just like where we came from, because there's been several genetic studies on where we came from. I think the last one, I believe, counts in going where we are. The general Irish population are closer to people in Spain than the Irish travelers. Yeah, I'll send you the link. That's really, really interesting. And how the travelers diverge from the settled community between 800 or up to 2,000 years ago. You go, grant. But why isn't this that there was society and then people became settled? So why did we diverge, or is that nomadism may have been a natural state in Ireland many times? And even just in smaller clusters, but moving around was very customary. And then the majority of people, because of political changes, evolution of kind of, I suppose, our agricultural understanding.
Yeah, and like urbanization and all that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then people became more sedentary, and we were just people kept moving. And so I think things that are really interesting, really fascinating, but they're not what gives the language worth.
Yeah,
it's the people who give us worth, and it's the thing. And I think it's just like there's under the concept of how like we even have different type of wind. I'm thinking of today where the sun tried to kill me. But the idea would be like we have lazy wind because it cuts through you rather than goes around you, and that itself is like we have a lazy wind, and working down your head, kind of going, that's just beautiful stuff, and it's easy, or even our insults. Like I the loads of stuff, but this is one I share quite often because it's hard for people to translate. So I want to let people, and for those I worry of, because there's this much level of like. To insult a traveler is terrible. To insult a traveler in our language would be horrendous, like violation.
Yeah,
you can imagine. But there is a concept that it's an insult and a blessing, really. It depends on how someone feels about themselves. So you look and going, mere child, be born with your face. Like, so either you call yourself I am gorgeous, or you just call yourself ugly. Do you know?
Yeah.
And like the wit in that is just that. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, but some of the projects now I'm working on the Sugar project with the Bhairdiuin Travel Group, and that's that's a localized collection as well of languages applying to the Wheel of the Year and the concepts, also looking at superstitions, of how that community has maintained, adapted some of its I suppose rituals and language and approaches and what lore it has. And then we have, I suppose, the artist groups, and then I used to run for quite some time a group called Tom Tarry, which was a language space. It's again, like most things COVID took from us, but we're hoping to reform in September. So there's a lot, but I think that even within the community, a lot of people feel they have a low attainment of it. But once you actually start bringing people through things, it's like going, let's talk about the word hand. Our word for hand is mona, because it is both a bag, you know, and mona is monas is like is to move, you know. So our hands are monas. So there's a shared etymological history, but also a very different understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and well, most people would sit down and go, "Oh, we wouldn't know a thing." But then you start bringing people into the body, numbers, animals, and suddenly people realize, "Yeah, actually, I still on board with it." But what is really interesting is that we don't have traditionally, or how the language works. It doesn't have as many link words. So I wouldn't say, "Can you give that to me?" You go, "Can me give get?" You know. And people, but that's very primal and very like very rudimentary. It's like going, "Oh no, actually, it's actually very effective."
Yeah.
And it's very, it's like random, like going, and sometimes over romanticized, really going like, I'm journeying to the shop and I'm going to the shop. So it's always be stretched out. Other times, shop go.
Yeah.
You know, like,
it's very effective.
And it's all the situation. So you see me, I'm like, I'm going to somewhere. Yeah. And you know, and so. And I always kind of how traditionally that has been, and especially academically, how that's been interpreted. That's very rudimentary. It's very basic and very not primitive. And I'm going, I think it's actually quite evolved, because different inflection and different situations and different body movements have a play in the language.
Yeah.
But again, if you're only writing it on a piece of paper, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. But like you look at that, like we're basically, like you look at text speak, you look at like emojis, like we're getting like we're having less and less words all the time. Like, but it's like as I said, it's effective, and it's the other word beginning with E that I can't think of now. It's efficient. Like it's so efficient to just like why do we need extra words? And I detest that about academia a lot of the time. It's like, as you said, that kind of outward looking perspective, looking inward and going and making judgments on something and going, oh well, that's not like this, so it must be like, you know, as I said, like it's, you know, rudimentary, or like that was said a lot of the time about Irish and like the Irish language, like, oh, it's backwards. It's like, no, it's not. It's just
primitive, but it's incredibly lyrical. And we share the content as well of how, especially around emotions, and like we always say it in English, but we say it in our indigenous languages. Like, oh, you can't be a feeling. And it's very clear in Gammon-Cant. It's very clear in kind of going like sadness. We say, I know people say upon me, we say sadness is with me, with translate as, or fire around my head for like we're angry. But you can't, it doesn't make sense. You can say it, but it doesn't really make sense to say I am sad.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, you're not sad. You cannot be sad. Like, but also it can't just be one thing, because like there's other stuff going on there too. So you just sad, there's lots going on, you're not hungry, you're tired, no, just sad. And so we reduce things, and when in fact it's far more complicated, complex, and template. It's really cool.
And far more nuanced, like, and you get that with language, and particularly like minority, like you get the concepts where you can sum it up in a word, but to explain it in English is you can try and sum it up as best you can, but you can't quite get it.
Yeah, no, because you're right. So and a lot of people want to, especially with the dictionaries, like translate, because one of the problems that what we're doing is that I'm trying to say primary language first and then translate it to English. And a lot of people, like even around the songwriting, people thought we're going to write the English song and we're going to turn it into Gammon-Cant. You're like going, it's not going to work. Like it may sound a certain way, but it's not actually. No, it's different ways to look at the world. And there's a lot of shares coming out of God, you know, but like this doesn't work. So we're working from that way over. And then when we work in the museum, something that we're playing at the moment is there's a lot of exhibitions there, and it's very difficult to adapt some of those. So there's flashcards, which can also lead onto a game. Like a word on one side, an image on the other side, to say like again the horse having curry, but also linking it to a exhibition or something with a horse in the museum's archives or in the museum building, because the connection with horses for the trans community is also a universal connection. So it's not just, that other people love horses, other people have history of horses. So our culture is a universal culture, not a, you know, and then how we're many of those shared threads of identity and history.
Yeah.
And so that's been fun. Actually, something I was working on earlier today.
Oh,
And
I was going to ask you about your work in the museum as well. You're working on is the language projects, is that part of your work, or is that as well as your work in the museum?
no, it's it was the current one is and we're just still playing with it, but I think we'll move. Anyway, it's the education stuff is really interested in it. And the community wants it as well. And like the museum is really kind of going. We didn't do this in the past, but we're learning. But also we understand we can't do this on our like certain people can't go in and just they can't do this. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time is like consultation, engagement, working out. One of the like John, and it's just my grief in that. But and the museum has actually, I'm only there since March. It's later March, but they've been very open around we need it done, but how we do it is going to take time. But also platforming stuff like that, people have access to our own history, to give access to the items. Most people don't know what the museum structures have. They don't know what's in archaeology about us, what's in kind of natural history, what's in art.
Oh, sorry.
Back?
Yeah, you're back.
You're back.
Sorry, I think my internet went there. Sorry.
No,
God in a bottle.
Yeah, God in a bottle. Have you ever come across it?
No.
Okay, so there's a few survivors back to the Dane House Par Museum beside Castle Bar in New York. And one was a traditional eating item. So people would get 9 different symbols and carry them into wood, put it in a bottle and fill it with holy water and keep it. So if a person recovered, the bottle would be broken. If the person didn't recover, it would be buried with them. And they have some surviving examples. I'm like going, I would love to know the history of that. And like, we're like, and sometimes I go, and like, people could totally have gifted it. It could have been, someone could have left it behind sometimes to become across it. But even that alone, and anyone that just so the past or history, then the people like myself would know, because that's something I'm passionate about, but many of our young people might know, like going on the stage in the nation, but also help remedy that, but also expand that.
Wow. That sounds fascinating.
Oh, I mean, also it's fun. I mean, enjoying it. It's different. Loads of hard work, but I don't mind hard work. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But the idea would be like to help adjust the structure to do the idea of like we've always been here, like and understand how it happened this way. Part of me feels when actually, I mean, if the religion didn't do all this other stuff, because that would just be horrible. We might have to look about the deconception thing. But the openness is there, and the community was very interested in telling those stories, those narratives, and those understanding, and also those objects.
Yeah.
And how moving from what the museum wants about Travers rather than what needs to happen. So what Travers wants the museum become custodian.
Yeah.
And that really will be a journey, but it's going to be a journey for everybody, like structures, society, community. Fun.
Yeah. And like honestly, like just from seeing all the work you did before we were talking today, and then just from listening to you today, I think it's in very good hands with directing it, and I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what you do, and I'll come up and have a look as well, because I just really thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything and talking to me and answering all my questions. But no, it's so important, and as you said, it's an integral part of our culture, and our history. And I'm a firm believer in we need to understand our culture and our history. Everyone needs to, and having that representation must mean the world as well, to be able to provide that representation for future generations as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed our wanderings and meanderings.
I loved it. Absolutely love it. Just like traveling from topic to topic. Absolutely.
Yeah, literally traveling from topic to topic.
Yeah. So Owen, where can people find you? I know I have your Twitter. So you're Owen on Twitter. Owen with Y.
Yeah, and what I'd say is that we also have a different way around name. So we have legal name, collective names, and individual names. So like legal name would go on this day, which is my actual name, which is wonderful. And then you have the collective name would be like my family line, so it would be Toher or Camog, to how to replace me. And then my individual name is, if you just so lucky, because some people aren't as fortunate, my name is Only's Own. So if people are defined now, it would be Owen's own, because I call it Oni. Like odd names on the family, which is fine. So like, so Oni, the Twitter, and or even just like Oni at Gmail. So I'm like, funny is that I'm terrible at replying to email, by the way.
I'm the same.
5-7 days, please. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I think Twitter's probably a good bet because you probably get a better reflection of all the wonderfully boring and wonderfully exciting things to do. You know?
Mostly
But
wonderful.
but it's come for a man that was literally in bed knitting a couple of Saturday days ago on like Dublin Pride. I'm like, I'm going home. I'm tired. At 10 o'clock. So I didn't really go, they're having a great night of this.
Has to be done sometimes. It has to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. But and if people are interested or connected or even have ideas or thoughts or even like no, I wouldn't say questions because my person wants to be a voice or community, which I even have this meanderings. And by all means, feel free to get in contact.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'll put all the links below, and the links, if you send me on the links as well about the DNA studies and stuff, I'll put all that down in the description below, and I'll put in like Rosemary, I'll put in all of the links that I can find, and I'll also put in the link to Traveller Pride Week events, because that is still going on. So I know it's from the 11th to 14th, but there's like
it's up to the 24th.
It's up to the 24th. So there's loads of stuff going on this week, next week. So yeah, thank you so much again, Owen, and Gerv Magat chat. Thank you very much for coming. And so long, Gafol. I will see you soon.